Hello and welcome back to Almost 30 Podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. It's Lindsey and Krista. I'm just trying to get comfortable in a chair.
Yeah, one of my butt cheeks is smaller than the other because I always lean on the right side.
Oh, I always lean on the left. That's interesting.
You should check your cheeks.
I should absolutely check
because I have tightness in that part of my body, and yeah, it's like it's a whole journey for my
100%.
myself.
I notice it when I drive. I kind of drive.
Oh yes,
like
that is a thing.
I don't even know.
This is even a practical exercise for people. Just taking a day to just notice their body, like even today I was running on the treadmill and I was just noticing where are my feet hitting the ground, like where am I lifting, like where am I feeling, just being like, where are you feeling everything? What is your natural inclination? Like right now I'm leaning on my right side, putting more weight on my right side, not on my left.
How are you compensating?
How are you compensating?
Because I think we have a high tolerance for like minor discomforts, and then we compensate to kind of make them a little less, but then we're creating some more misalignments.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I've had my my left lower back has been killing me for like, I'd say 6 months now.
Is it like a
I have to go to
dull pain or
I
like
go to
a
Dr.
pull?
Danny. It's different. It changes a lot. Depending on the tightness, it's like basically this muscle is pulling on it right here. And then my hamstring is pulling on it. But yeah, I've been like really mindful of it because of that, but it hurts.
Yeah.
I thought it was sciatica and it's not.
It's
I
always
told
sciatica.
everybody.
You're
I told everybody.
Sciatica.
I was like, I have sciatica. And then Mo, our masseuse, he was like, what is it like? I'm like, he's like, that's not sciatica.
Dude, I love Mo. Miss Mo.
You know,
if I have more time, I would definitely go see Mo. I'm like constantly hunched a little bit.
Yeah.
Not constantly, but like I find myself hunched and or just getting in interesting positions with the baby, whether it's like he's sleeping, I have to be in this position, or feeding or whatever. So it's been really, I'm kind of on the tip of like noticing how I can be more comfortable and in alignment and take care of him. So yeah, I feel like moms out there, we kind of go a long time before realizing that we have a lot of aches and pains.
Yeah. How does your body feel?
Overall okay, but I feel like if I went to like a fascial specialist or if I went to an alignment specialist, it would be a little funk town.
Really?
Like overall I feel fine, but I think my tolerance is kind of high.
Yeah, you do have a high pain tolerance.
So I think like my hips are a little bit off.
Yeah.
I think my shoulders and neck have a lot of tension because I'm holding a lot. Yeah, I could stretch more.
Yeah, I know.
All those things.
Isn't that the whole thing? Stretching. My God, I forgot to tell you, and I wanted to talk about this on the show before we get into this episode on periods in our cycle. So I was at this influencer dinner the other night, a bunch of influencers. And you know what's interesting is even saying that, I'm like, you know what? I wouldn't even say that everyone is always an influencer, because a lot of times the people that I'm with are entrepreneurs. They have business, like these people are making millions and millions of dollars. Like they're crazy. But this one was more so, I guess, people that are just content creator influencers. And that's not a just, but whatever. So there was someone there, so beautiful, like so stunning, doesn't eat a thing. And I'm like, that's fine. It's all good. Like whatever, do your thing. But I'm like, okay. And then we ended up going someplace else and we got pizza because it was later. And all of us are just eating pizza. And like some of the girls were taking content of us eating pizza because
how could you not?
What do you mean? Girls eating pizza? Crazy. Freaking, can you believe it? It is so funny because it's like, there's an undertone of like, this is naughty.
It's but like, we're normal.
Yeah, exactly. It's this is naughty, but we're normal. Like, watch us eat this pizza. So everyone's eating pizza. And my girl takes takes pictures of the pizza and then posts like she ate the pizza.
But she didn't eat the pizza.
But she didn't eat any of the pizza and was like, oh, I love eating pizza. Like, da, 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 da.
That's really interesting.
I was triggered.
Yeah.
I have to really think about why it makes me so mad. It just makes me so mad because if you're someone that is selling your looks as the thing. And that's totally fine. Like to be someone that, as a beautiful woman, to make money mostly on the fact that you're really beautiful and brands want to use you as a model for their stuff, like whatever. But like then to be like, I'm so beautiful and you guys are bought into my beauty, but I also eat whatever I want or eat this food and you can too, and be lying.
Yeah.
It's like be someone that's beautiful and then be like, I actually work really hard and I've actually sacrificed a lot of life and a lot of joy and a lot of experience for this beauty.
Yeah.
Then people would know what it takes to look like that.
Yes.
It actually takes sometimes, not all the time. Sometimes people just got what is going on. But like it actually takes you sacrificing a lot to look like that.
Yeah.
And that's what I think bothers me is like the perception that you can have it all. Some people have it all again, for sure. But like you can eat the pizza, you can do the thing, and then you can also like look like that. I was just like, and like, why lie?
Yeah, that's the whole thing. I'm just like, what's that? And that's where I get like, I think just kind of taking like cheap opportunities for content.
Yes.
And then, yeah, it's weird. And especially if you were there, I would be nervous that someone would call me out who was there.
I was so tempted. I was like, baby, come on.
LOL.
I was going to be like, baby, come on.
Yeah.
It's all good.
We didn't see you take a freaking bite.
I was the last one standing with the pizza.
Yeah.
It was at that point, no more content was being taken and I was still going to hard on the
They're
pizza.
like, Krista, come on.
No, honestly, they're like, we're done. We had a few bites. Like, we're good. But I just feel like, I guess I wanted to say it because I just wanted to remind people that not like the whole like social media is fake, because we all know that, but just that life isn't always as beautiful and easy for everyone as people make it look like online.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like people struggle, people are not being honest, people are putting out a fake perception of who they are so that people buy into it. And it's not anyone's fault if they buy into it or not, but it's like just remembering that. And too, like for a lot of people that look certain ways that you see online, their whole life revolves around looking that way.
I know.
Like their entire existence, and no shade, entire existence revolves around looking a certain way.
I know. It's exhausting, or it can be. It would exhaust me. That's what I'll say.
It would exhaust me.
You know?
Yeah, I think it would just make me sad. I've never been someone that, I've had my vibe. Obviously, I've talked a lot about body stuff, but I've never been able to like fully, I don't think I've ever been able to like fully say no or like be like that, I guess.
Yeah. But also, if that's like your whole brand online and you are also a really like dynamic person offline, I can respect that too.
Huh, that's true.
If you're like very one-dimensional online and you don't show everything,
That's a good
or
one.
like people don't know your full story
That's a good
or
one.
whatever, I'm like, is that my vibe? No, but like I respect it.
For sure. Down
In
with
a way.
that. Yeah,
In a way.
down with that. I just think the food and eating thing is so sensitive for people, you know?
So, and that's kind of like a really obvious one where it's like, ooh,
Yeah.
you know, like I think if she were to think about it, she probably knows that that's a little manipulative, I guess.
It's like I'm cool and laid back.
Totally.
You know, whatever.
Yes.
Gosh, it was so silly. And then, okay, so to segue into our podcast episode, this was such an interesting point that I've been thinking about lately. So we had Lauren Pompanos on the podcast. She's a functional nutritionist, functional fueling on Instagram. And what was so interesting that we talked about that I've never thought about before, she's like, so many people do cycle syncing. She's like, but oftentimes people don't actually have an accurate understanding of where they're at in their cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Or like you can only really do it if you've like done testing to see where you're at in each part and to like understand if your cycle is even regular or if you even have the correct hormones at each level of your cycle. Because otherwise you're just kind of cycle syncing to like a general broad brush stroke idea of what a cycle should be. And yours actually might be very different based on where you're at and what your hormone levels are at in the first place.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
She's like, so I think when people do like their calendars and their like launches and all their stuff to their cycle, she's like, I think it's ridiculous because it's like they're doing it to a general broad brush stroke and not to their cycle.
Yeah, kind of splitting it into 4 equal things.
Exactly.
Or,
it's like each is a week. She's like, that's not really how it works.
Yeah.
people's have like longer, shorter, like different. She's like, so it doesn't really work that way. You can do it high level, but it doesn't really work that way.
Yeah, it ties into this conversation too, because Nicole is really talking about how each person has a very unique health print. You know, like your health is so unique. And so these broad stroke, you know, healing modalities or avenues of healing for, say, PCOS or other conditions related to your like female health, might not be for you. And so if you're not testing, if you're not like getting really specific about what your body needs or is lacking, it can be detrimental. So same thing, you know, it's just, we have to go that extra step and find out what's happening with our bodies, where we are in our cycle in order to cycle sync.
And this would make sense, I think, with the influx of supplements, of different types of things people can take, of different things people can do that are being shared online on social media that people apply to their lives without realizing. And I'm sure I've done that too, you know, like take the thing, do the thing without really, really understanding if it's going to be needed for you.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I still do that sometimes.
I know.
I
feel like I did that this morning.
Yeah.
I'm like, when am I not doing
that? Nicole Jardim is a certified women's health coach, writer, speaker, mentor. She's the author of Fix Your Period. This is 6 weeks to banish bloating, conquer cramps, manage moodiness, and ignite lasting hormone balance. I feel like a lot of women, a lot of my friends actually recently where they are silently suffering with horrible periods.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm so grateful to God. I'm so grateful. My body is just, the only way that my body's been bad to me is because I hated it for not being a certain size. You know what I mean? I've had such great health.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel also really blessed. Also, giving birth totally resets. This is a blanket statement, but for me has reset my cycle, menstruation. I have 0 symptoms. I just bleed.
Wow.
As before, I did have cramps for about 12 hours beforehand. I would like just feel kind of off. No symptoms whatsoever. So it was really interesting.
I wonder if that has to do with breastfeeding too.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's my intuition.
Yeah, could be. But her work spans, so this book, she's also the founder of Institute for Menstrual Health. She has a certification program for women's hormone health, and she hosts the Period Party. This is a podcast. But today we are talking about various conditions like PMS, PMDD, PCOS. A lot of people are living with these conditions and are being misdiagnosed. They are being at times gaslit by doctors. We talk how to navigate the Western medical system as it relates to women's health, because there's not a lot, relatively speaking, research around women's health. There's not a lot of money going to that. I think more money is going to like creating a birth control pill, if you know what I mean. So we talk about how to navigate that. We do talk about tracking and charting the menstrual cycle, like your own menstrual cycle, getting very specific about that, how to do that. And for anyone that's wanting to get off the pill, we touch on that. We've talked about that on the podcast before.
So many people are getting off the pill.
So many.
I think I wonder, actually, I would love to hear data and research from pharmaceutical companies on like the numbers for that.
They will not share that.
They would never share that.
Absolutely not.
Hey guys. Hey Pfizer. Dear Pfizer.
How much money have you lost from our episodes?
I need your numbers.
Dude, it is.
I would love to see that.
It's pretty crazy. Because I think it's a whole movement now.
A movement where people are, and we were early on in the movement for sure.
Very earls.
Years and years ago.
So I love Nicole. She is just like so heart-centered in her work. She had her own experience with her cycle and her health. And I know you're going to love this episode. These episodes always, we have a bunch of them just in terms of hormone health, but I think it's always a great coming together to remind us just about our own unique bodies and own cycles and how we can feel a lot better than we do.
Beautiful.
So you can go to NicoleJardim.com, Nicole, Jardim. You can go to fixyourperiod.com. She's on Instagram, Nicole M. Jardim. And you can take a quiz on her website just to discover the root cause of your symptoms and powerful steps to balance your hormones naturally.
Beautiful. And if you want more episodes on hormone health from Almost 30, you can search hormones Almost 30. You can search birth control Almost 30. We have a lot of incredible, incredible guests and conversations about that. So we'll put it in the show notes, but it will be great to also just search it to make it super easy for you and your journey. Really appreciate you being a part of our lives. We love you so much. We have over 700 episodes, so make sure to subscribe and dig in on tons of topics. We've run the gamut over the years. Almost30.com for information on Lindsey and I. You can take the Saturn return calculator to figure out if you're in your Saturn return or the dates of your Saturn return. And Morning Microdose is our clip show. So it's the best of Almost 30. Make sure to subscribe. You can find it wherever you listen to podcasts now.
All right, y'all. We'll see you on the other side. Enjoy this one.
Enjoy.
Bye. I recently did a cross-country trip with my family. I am so freaking proud. I'm like smiling right now because I had a lot of anxiety leading up to this trip. But one of the things that got me through and was so important was making sure I had my favorite snack on hand in my bag. Yes, I had snacks for the baby, but if mama is not fed, it's going to get hairy. And I had Chomps. Y'all know it. Chomps is the best. These are high quality, high protein meat sticks that are super clean and so yummy. I don't know about you, but I check nutrition labels all the time for the protein amounts in what I'm eating. And Chomps has 12 grams of protein. It's low carb. The flavors are just going to rock your world. There's no fillers or anything like that. All of the meat is sustainably sourced. I'm behind it. So I have a ton of Chomps like hidden everywhere in my bag, in the cabinet, in my bedside table. Yes. But with thousands of 5-star reviews, if you don't believe me, those reviews will tell you. Snackers around the world are super satisfied. And what's awesome is that you can order online and have them delivered straight to your door. And you can even subscribe for ongoing savings. And we have an incredible, incredible deal for you. Right now, Chomps is offering our listeners 20% off your first order and free shipping when you go to chomps.com/almost30. Go to chomps.com/almost30 to see all the delicious flavors and get 20% off your first order and free shipping. That's chomps.com/almost30. Don't forget to use that link so that they know we sent you. My life changed when I began to hydrate myself properly. I was drinking regular, old, boring water for a really long time and not realizing that I wasn't being properly hydrated. And so in the past, I would say it's like 3 years now, I have been properly hydrating with Element, LMNT. This is a powdered electrolyte drink mix that has no sugar, incredible flavors, and has the perfect proportion of electrolytes. So it has salt, it has magnesium, and it has potassium. And I have never felt better, y'all. I am properly freaking hydrated. I even got tested during my pregnancy on the regular to make sure I was hydrated, which is not very common with pregnant women. And I was hydrated every single time. And it's because I was on my element game. I still am. I'm breastfeeding and I'm able to produce milk. It's been like my number one tip for people. Make sure you hydrate properly. And now Element has sparkling water. Like my dreams come true. They come in these cool cans and y'all, it is yummy. Here, let me give you a little tip about drinking Elements. So the packets, the powder packets, I will put a whole packet in 40 ounces of water. That gives it enough like dilution just to make it taste really, really good. Or in like 20 ounces of water, I'll do a half packet. And I kind of just like taste test it, see how much salt I want, but you can totally make your own. And then with the sparkling water, I mean, I just take that can down. But if you want to, put a little bit of regular sparkling water or regular water in it to dilute it, that's great too. But y'all, you need this salt. It is super, super important for most systems of the body. It's very serious like that. Hormonal regulation, nerve impulses, nutrient absorption, fluid balance, and more. So you got to take this seriously. So if you're someone who is experiencing headaches or muscle cramps, fatigue, sleepiness, or other common symptoms of electrolyte deficiency, you gotta hydrate properly and see how you feel. I promise you, It's gonna get better. Everyone's using Element. I'm sure you've heard about it. Everyone from NBA, NFL, and NH players to Olympic athletes to your next door neighbor. Right now, Element is offering our listeners a free sample pack with any order. That's 8 single serving packets free with any Element order. It's great because you get to try out all the flavors. My favorites right now are orange and raspberry. I also love chocolate. I put that in milk. Yep, chocolate milk. It's amazing. Get yours at drinkelement.com/almost30. That deal is only available through this link. So you must go to drinklmnt.com/almost30. That's drinkelement.com/almost30. Well, I'm so happy to have you here in person. Our audience, I would say our number one topic, or maybe top three, I'd say number one, is hormones, is our female health when it comes to our menstrual cycles, when it comes to balancing our hormones. A lot of people in our audience have been on the pill for a long time, going off the pill. By the way, we'll start this conversation by saying, you know, we've shared our personal experience with the pill, but we just want to honor everyone's, decisions around that. Yeah. I think my whole thing is informed consent when it comes to birth control. So I'm just like thrilled to have this conversation with you. You are just an incredible expert, and I feel your passion in your work. So I'm just excited to get into the nitty-gritty of all things hormones and PMS and our periods. I was actually talking to someone the other day who I see on a regular basis. They're kind of someone new in my life, but I've seen them a lot lately. And anytime they get their period, they're taken down for like a week.
Yeah.
And it's been their whole life that they've experienced this. I'm like, wait, what? Really? And me being annoying, I'm like, have you tried this and listened to this and read this? You know, because it's just something I can't imagine.
Yeah.
I feel like I've been relatively lucky. I've had painful periods and symptoms and all the things, but I'm in a place now where I don't. But yeah, I feel like a lot of people are suffering.
They really are.
Yeah.
It's astounding, actually, when you think about the numbers and what you just said about your friend who has struggled her whole life.
Yep.
That's the other piece of it that is almost enraging because we have just so normalized these conditions, these symptoms. And I think about this line that I say a lot, you know, it might be statistically normal, but it's not biologically normal. And we have just accepted this sad state of health for women generally. And when I think about the stats, like 1 in 8 women have PCOS. In some countries, it's 1 in 5.
Wow.
1 in 10 have endometriosis. It takes 10 years to get diagnosed with endo in many cases. 10 years when you have a debilitating period.
Why that long?
Because I think there's such a lack of education around what this condition is. There's a lot of ignorance around what the diagnostic procedure should be and what, you know, who has it, who can have it. A lot of doctors think that teenagers can't have it, except it's the number one cause of period pain for teenagers. So it's just crazy because there's not a cohesive understanding, I think, across the board of what these conditions are and how they should be diagnosed. I mean, you think about fibroids, 70% of women will have fibroids. Something like up to 90% of women will have premenstrual symptoms at some point in their lives. So it's just, these are just massive numbers. Yeah. And yet we have just kind of ignored all of these problems and shoved the birth control pill down so many women's throats. And again, like you said, I think everyone should make a decision about what makes sense for them. And of course, some women don't even have a choice. They've got to take it because that's the only option available in the place that they live, in the country that they live even. So I feel like all of those things have to be considered. But the fact that we've used the pill as a Band-Aid for pretty much every women's health problem that exists is really just reflective of how sad the state of affairs is when it comes to women's health.
Completely. Yeah. I don't know. Were you ever on birth control?
I was. Yeah.
What was your story?
Hence the reason I'm here doing this work. Yeah, I started to have problem periods. Probably when I was about 14 or so. I got my period when I was 12. I really didn't have any issues. I should preface this by saying that my dad died really suddenly when I was 11 in a plane accident. So it was, and it was just sort of at the beginning of puberty, which is already challenging enough, as we all know. And obviously this was very traumatic and just threw our family into a tailspin. And by the time I was 14 or so, my periods were just felt completely out of control. I was in so much pain, missing school, so heavy. I was the girl at the sleepovers who had the towel put under her.
Heavy. I remember that. I remember wearing like many layers of underwear, many pads, like
so horrifying, right? Totally.
horrifying
I was
at a
going
young
to school
age
too
to try and
with
like hide that.
The worst. And yeah, exactly. I would go to school and I'd have on like underwear, tampon, pad,
Yes.
shorts under my uniform. Right?
Exactly. Oh my God, the
So,
shorts.
I mean, it's already bad enough being a teenager, as you well know. So that was just too much for me. And then what happened is probably around 16 or 17, they started becoming really irregular. And then suddenly I would get it every 3 or 4 months. And I thought, well, this isn't so bad. Kind of an improvement. And then finally, my mom was like, okay, I think we should probably go to the gynecologist and see what's going on. And so we went to her gynecologist, and she, after listening to my whole detailed explanation of what was going on, said, okay, well, I'm just going to put you on the pill. And at the time I thought, wow, this is amazing because all my friends are on the pill. So I'm finally
I know, it's like a rite of passage.
Yeah, right. I'm part of this cool kids club now, and I'm going to be on the pill. And lo and behold, I had an amazing period, the next period, because of course it just shut everything down and I had no pain. It came on time and I had no bloating, no heavy bleeding, nothing really. And so I thought, okay, I've found my period panacea and this is it. This is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life until I started having all of these side effects. And they're so unsuspecting because you start with like a UTI or a yeast infection. You just think, oh, well, other girls are getting those too. So that's just normal. I'd never had any of these issues before. And then my hair started falling out and I didn't really notice it because I just didn't notice it. But someone said to me, your hair looks so much thinner. And I was like, oh yeah, interesting. I guess it is. And, and then I started putting on weight. And so it was just sort of these, like a chronology of problems that now looking back, you can see that the pill obviously impacts your gut microbiome. It really impacts how you absorb nutrients that are really crucial for overall health. And so over those 4 or 5 years that I was on it, things got progressively worse. It got to the point where I was having chronic UTIs. I was having joint pain. My gut was a disaster. They thought I had Crohn's disease. I mean, it was just, I was the poster child, I think, for period problems or pill-related problems. And the last straw was I ended up having an allergic reaction to an antibiotic that I took for the UTIs and ended up in the ER with a pretty severe allergic reaction. And that was really the turning point. A friend of mine in college was like, I've been telling you about my acupuncturist for a really long time. I think you should try him now.
That angel friend that swoops in with the holistic,
Always, right? I know.
Wow.
So that was really the turning point for me. And he was the first person I'd probably seen 20 doctors at that point. I'd had melasma all over my face. So I'd seen multiple dermatologists, multiple GI doctors. The gynecologist was a revolving door and no one said anything about the pill, but he was the first one who, of course, pointed out that it was a problem and I didn't believe him, of course. And so that was really the beginning of this entire journey. Wow.
Yeah, I feel like I've heard a range of experiences, right? Mostly that there's a lot of symptoms that pop up when people are on the pill, a lot of adverse effects, but some are on it and feel totally fine. One thing you said struck me and I've never heard before, just to get granular, is the blocking nutrients. Like nutrient absorption.
Yes.
What is that?
There's little research. That's the unfortunate part.
I think that's what's so frustrating about women's health in general. But keep going.
It is. It's super frustrating with women's health. I mean, we weren't even required to be included in studies until 1993. So they were doing trials on drugs for women without women in the trials. Cool. Yeah, I know.
Sounds good.
And it wasn't only till I think 2015 when they were required to actually show the results on the women they included in the trials. Insane. I know. So here we are in 2024 and, we're majorly lacking in research on everything. So yes, the understanding is that It could be the impact of the pill on the gut microbiome. I've sort of simplified it to say that it seems to have like an antibiotic type effect on the gut microbiome. So of course we end up losing out on some of the good bacteria that we need. And I think that plays a really big role in the malabsorption that we end up having when we're on the pill, and like B vitamins particularly, and minerals like magnesium and various others that we obviously really need for a healthy menstrual cycle.
Wow.
Yeah.
For people that are put on the pill because of PCOS or endometriosis, I guess why are they being put on the pill for that? Like, I guess what is the short answer? Why? Because it seems to be the answer for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And then actually that first, because I have a part B to the question and I'll ask after.
Yeah. Well, like we were talking about, for whatever reason, well, I actually feel like I know the reason. I'll share it briefly, but the issue is that it's become this Band-Aid, solution.
One size fits all.
One size fits all, exactly, solution to all of these women's health problems. And what's really interesting is that in the 80s, a few pharmaceutical companies that manufactured these birth control pills decided that they didn't really want to spend the money on the R&D that was required to figure out better forms of birth control or improve their birth control, just because of how expensive this kind of research is, obviously, and they're managing actual birth control, so that's a huge responsibility. And so they did a bit of a rebrand of some pills in the 80s and early 90s. And this kind of coincided with when actual medical or medications were being marketed directly to consumers. And so they turned some of their pills into what they referred to as lifestyle drugs. So they wanted to make them more appealing for women. So you could get a pill for premenstrual symptoms or acne or irregular cycles to regulate your cycle. And so there was a whole research study done on this. And I was fascinated as I was reading this because they made a huge concerted effort to shift their way of marketing all of these medications. So things like Seasonique came about, which was the one where you got a period 4 times a year.
Yes.
And there was Yaz, and that's great for acne. So all of these things were just rebranded. Wow. And so for a few decades now, we've had this push to utilize the pill for all of these different female-related problems. And I really do think that that has played a huge role in why we're just blanket prescribing it. Yeah.
I remember, I was put on the pill at 18. Well, my mom found out I was having sex with my boyfriend, but also acne. Like there was a couple things that like, it was like, well, 2 for 1, like let's just do it. Was never told the side effects, never told like, hey, so if you go on this, like this might happen, be on the lookout for this. Thankfully, I didn't have any really, well, I think being on it 10 years does something to your body. And I think it took me a long time to balance my hormones. I experienced severe acne after I got off. And I gained a lot of weight when I was on it. Yeah, just really interesting and common. The PCOS and endometriosis, have these been around for a long time? Are they popping up now that we're just, are there environmental factors? Are there lifestyle factors? Is it the pill? Like, why are we hearing about them now? What's happening?
Oh my gosh, I know. The $1 million question. So loaded. Yes. It's so interesting. Dr. Felice Gersh is a doctor who I have followed for a long time, and she's written multiple books on PCOS. She's a gynecologist, amazing woman, and really speaks to the PCOS piece. She says that it's a genetic variant that has been around for like 50,000 years. It's fascinating. And so what the point of saying that is that we had this genetic variant to help us. So women who had the variant were able to survive long winters or times of famine because their bodies held on to nutrient stores. They held on to weight longer than those who didn't have this variant. So
Okay.
it was a survival mechanism, just like everything is, really.
Yeah.
And now, unfortunately, in our modern society, we've seen what that has done to all of these genetic variants. They've turned it on, and now we're here dealing with so many of the problems that we're dealing with.
Wow.
And so I just loved that description because so many women with PCOS think that they're inherently broken. There's something wrong with them. Their bodies just don't work the way they're supposed to. And they really don't in our modern world because we have an overabundance of processed food, as you know, so much sugar, so many refined carbohydrates, which are hugely problematic for this type of genetic variant. So, yes, PCOS has been around forever, or at least that variant has. And endometriosis, I'm not entirely sure about the history, but what I do know is that I feel like there has been a massive explosion of this condition. And I think that even the 1 in 10 stat is probably off because I don't even know when the last person did any kind of research into the actual statistics around the prevalence of this condition. So, what I think is just so unfortunate with something like endo is that the myth that's perpetuated is that if you take the pill, that's the solution for it, and it won't continue to grow. But what we see is that in many, many cases, the endo tissue continues to grow unabated. And it's like you're just having a house fire and you close the door and walk away versus actually putting the fire out.
Wow.
And that's what I continue to see a lot of. And it's unfortunate because it can take your fertility from you. It can cause
And
huge
what is
problems.
endometriosis, just for people that don't know?
Yeah, absolutely. So endo is basically tissue that looks like the uterine lining growing outside of the uterus. So it grows in the peritoneal cavity, it grows on the ovaries, on the fallopian tubes, it grows on your bowel. So it can cause a lot of bowel issues. In fact, a lot of women are diagnosed with IBS or IBD before being diagnosed with endo because it causes all of these problems.
Wow.
So it's very intricately connected. So SIBO and endo are big time connected. And so we end up in a situation where we're actually misdiagnosed in many cases too. And so what happens is it grows in the bowel. It can also grow in the lungs. It can grow pretty much anywhere in the body now, nasal cavities. Yeah. So I've had patient or clients who've had endo on their lungs and they have problems breathing. So it's a massive issue because if it grows, it's very difficult to excise it when the time comes to actually have it removed.
Is this like something that people can die from? Not to be morbid, but that sounds crazy.
It really does have a massive impact on quality of life for a lot of women. But no, I mean, not that I know of, but possibly. I mean, maybe from complications.
Sure.
Yeah.
What is the current treatment for endometriosis besides the birth control pill?
Yes, so that seems to be the main one, but the gold standard would be excision surgery for people who have the endo that's grown to the point where it just is really disrupting their lives and causing huge quality of life issues. For a lot of women, though, that's just not possible. I mean, it's not possible to get a $50,000, $100,000 surgery, and in many cases, insurance isn't covering it, which we run into a lot with women's health issues. So I actually just had someone saying yesterday on Instagram that her surgery, they charged her like $250,000 and then there were complications. So somehow the bill got to $1 million.
Stop it.
No, seriously. She was just talking about it. And I was saying to her that I'd had an appendectomy and had some problems with the billing and insurance as well. And so I suggested a company to help her with it because she was like, I'm never in my whole life going to pay this bill. So yeah, it was $1 million surgical bill. And this is what women are facing, like $50,000 minimum.
What?
Yeah, and insurance
it's not
in many cases
covered?
isn't covering it.
What do you mean?
Yeah, it's like constantly because they haven't updated the billing codes for endometriosis since like the 70s or the 80s. So it's like 30 years. And so there's multiple types of endo, obviously, that they've discovered through research, but there's like 4 billing codes or something crazy like that. Yeah, it's insane. Yeah.
Okay.
I know.
Wow.
So you can't even make this stuff up.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Yeah.
Okay. A lot of people also experience, as we've discussed, PMS and PMDD.
Yeah.
What's the difference between those two? And I guess, what does that look like, just so people can have an idea?
Yeah. So PMS is premenstrual syndrome. And as I was saying, up to 90% of women at some point or another will experience, even if it's just 1 or 2 symptoms, they'll experience it. So, which makes sense. And it is typically what happens is it shows up in the second half of your cycle, probably that week to a couple of days before your period. And there are physical and emotional symptoms that are involved. So anything from bloating to headaches and migraines to acne and, crampiness, and then the mood issues, which, we've all experienced, anxiety, anger, rage, all of it pretty much like runs the gamut. And so it can be mild to severe, very much dependent on what your month has been like, what your last 3 months have been like.
Sure.
And then there is the PMDD piece, which is, I call it PMS's bigger, badder sister. It's really silly, but it kind of is that. And it is really very much a mood disorder. It's characterized as a mood problem, a mood disorder. And it's in the DSM-5. So it really is actually a psychiatric categorized as a psychiatric condition. And so those are much more severe symptoms. So you're thinking of like suicide ideation and rages that are majorly compromising your relationships and mood swings to the point where you can't really function and you can't work, and severe anxiety. And it's almost like a mini depression that you experience every month. Yeah. And so it's very debilitating. And the studies show like 2 to 8% of women experience PMDD. And that's another one that I feel has really exploded in the last 10 years or so. And I say this all the time. I definitely don't discount by any means the symptoms that women are experiencing. God knows I've experienced all this stuff too. But I just feel like, when are we going to stop pathologizing these experiences? We're experiencing these things for a reason. I just don't think that we are having these severe symptoms just because we have a menstrual cycle. It's not like our menstrual cycles are a defect. They're kind of a marvel, actually.
Yes.
And
what would you say, I guess, just in your work, what would you point to as reasons for the rise of PMDD and more intense PMS symptoms?
I think that there's a bit of an evolutionary mismatch happening right now with us, our biology, and our society. And I feel almost on a precipice of some kind, because I just don't think the way the majority of us live is sustainable.
I agree.
When I think back to living in the city, we were just talking about that. I was there for 10 years and I didn't realize how jacked up my nervous system was until I'd actually gotten out of the system or out of the environment.
Yes.
And I think that so many of us are like that. We're a bit of a frog in a boiling pot. And it's just getting worse and worse, and we don't really realize it's our environment that's causing these problems. So it's a combination of things. I think it's the extreme stress that we are exposed to. When I think about 10,000 years ago, you're on the plains and you're hunting for whatever, and you see a lion, like that's an extreme stressful moment. And I just think the lion's chasing us now constantly is what it feels like.
It's like that low level or mid-level stress all the time. And it becomes kind of like our baseline.
Yeah. And then we exacerbate it by going to CrossFit classes and spin classes and drinking huge gallons of coffee. It's all this stuff that we don't even realize are stressors that are really stressing us or internally stressing us. So I think it's a combination of that, as well as childhood trauma piece. There's a huge part of that too. When I think about fibroids and childhood sexual trauma is definitely linked to both of those conditions. So it makes so much sense. And
no
then
one's
there's
talking about that.
No one's talking about that.
Yeah.
I know. But there's actual research. The research shows it. And
really? There is research?
Oh, there's research. Yes, absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah, it's not only in my own anecdotal experience. Like there's actual research that shows that for fibroids, for endometriosis particularly.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I would think that that's a huge part of it. But I think one of the biggest underlying factors is our collective state of our gut health and how much our gut has been impacted by our environment over the last 30, 40 years. And so one of the big triggers that I've also found when digging through the research is histamine intolerance, which is driven by immune system dysregulation And so histamine is just released by mast cells, which are immune cells.
Yep.
And it's basically when you're having some sort of allergic reaction, generally speaking, right? So you have a histamine response when it's springtime, which it is right now. I actually started sneezing when I drove in here. And I thought of that. But yeah, so it's one of those classic, like you're sneezing, your eyes are watering, your nose is running, you're getting maybe hives, things like that. But that immune dysregulation is a big trigger for mood issues. And yes, it's fascinating. So there's a huge connection between PMDD as well as endometriosis. We have higher histamine problems with endometriosis and even with fibroids, adenomyosis. I'm seeing it like there's immune dysregulation and bacterial dysregulation pretty much across the board with these conditions. So it's fascinating.
And your immune system, I'm going to butcher this, but so much of it is in your gut? Like
almost all of it is.
Wow.
Right. So
I've been, this is like an aside, but like I've been doing just a little bit of research to understand. I have an almost 8-month-old, and I've been giving him new foods, and just understanding the importance of their gut health from the get is so important. So understanding like what foods to introduce first to because what can happen is they could have leaky gut from like very early on. And so if foods get into their bloodstream through the gut, then that triggers a response, whether severe or mild, but still. Absolutely. So I've just been really fascinated by like that connection to the gut, even so early on. I mean, we weren't thinking about, my parents had no, it's like, no one's thinking about this stuff.
Nobody was thinking about any of that stuff. Leaky gut wasn't even a term.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, right?
But I also think our food has changed.
So much.
I think, food, our water, like what else? Like what else is affecting our gut right now?
I mean, the environmental chemicals, I think, is one of our biggest problems.
It's a big one.
Yeah,
like
it's a
what?
big one. The plastics in our environment, for sure, I think are just so problematic. When I think about BPA, the effect of BPA on our ovaries, on our ovarian function, on our egg quality. There's actual research for that too. It's amazing what's out there. That's what I think is so cool, actually, is that there is a lot of research. We just don't really hear about it. Not at all. We don't really hear about it. Nobody's really talking about it.
Drinking from a plastic water bottle.
So drinking from plastic water bottles. I was just actually watching a podcast episode with Sean Stevenson. I think he was on this episode. Sean is amazing. And he had someone on who was talking about that, about drinking coffee or tea through a plastic lid.
Saw that.
Oh, did you just have a heart attack over that one?
The plastic lid, but also the paper
liner
cup
inside
is
the
lined
paper
with plastic.
I almost fell over. I was like, okay, I'm done. I mean, I never drink with the lid. I always take it off, and people are like, why don't you want the lid?
Cup, I'm good, but no.
Yeah, I know, right? And when she said, paper is very porous and water goes right through it, I was like, oh yeah, shoot.
I know.
So
it's
upsetting.
everywhere.
It's everywhere. So that's the part, right? Is that it feels so inescapable. And so it's just in everything. And then they talk about the microplastics and seafood and all of this. And I don't want to go down that sad rabbit hole, but
I know
there's a lot. So I think that that's a big part of it. I think Wi-Fi and EMFs are also a big part of this. I mean, that's the other thing. We're exposed to a billion times more electromagnetic fields than 40 years ago, which makes sense because obviously we didn't have all this stuff before.
5G everywhere.
Yeah.
And I think for people listening, you can notice, and this is not to like send you down a rabbit hole to make you more stressed. Because there are things like when I think about Wi-Fi and EMFs and radiation, all that, like I could literally become very unwell if I really go down that rabbit hole because you can't escape it, truly. I have Wi-Fi in my home. Like I get it, but there are little things that I've done that give me peace of mind, sort of. But if you think about how you feel, if you've gone anywhere that's a bit more in the middle of nowhere type vibe without all of the 5G everywhere, I feel different.
Yes.
My nervous system feels different. My brain feels different. Like it's really interesting to notice that nuance of feeling. Because when we're in it, we're just in it. And we're like, what? No difference. But when you are out of it and you feel the difference, it's unbelievable.
It really is. I know. It was like me leaving the city and then realizing, oh, wait a second. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
If you're paying attention, for sure.
Yeah,
So I think it's just this combination of things. And then I think it's the stress piece because
for sure.
cortisol 100% weakens the junctions in your gut lining.
Okay.
And so it creates leaky gut. So it makes sense if you are externally stressed, obviously the environment, but internally stressed too. If you're eating too much sugar, that's driving up your blood sugar, that raises cortisol, that's going to cause problems for you. If you're eating something you're potentially allergic to or have a sensitivity to, that's all going to create that leaky gut environment.
Wow.
Yeah. Antibiotics. I mean, it's
Oh,
antibiotics
yeah.
too. Yeah.
I
that's a
mean,
big
how
one.
many antibiotics was
How
I
many have
on
we
as a
all
kid?
taken?
It's crazy.
Nobody
And
thought
now I'm a
about it.
psychopath with my child.
You're like,
But
you're never having antibiotics.
he actually did have one early on, and I was like fighting tooth and nail, but it was like one of those things where, you know, had a cough for too long and it's like
Yeah.
one of those things where I'm thinking about the gut. That's all I'm thinking about. I'm not worried about him having a cough for too long, which I don't know if it's right or wrong, but I just understand now how impactful being on antibiotics is. So I like put him on a probiotic, but anyway, this episode is brought to you by IQ bars. Y'all, I used to fast. I used to fast all the time. I wouldn't eat until noon. And it's just such a blessing that I've come around to the fact that, eating something in the morning is so important. Just what I put in my body in the morning is really important. So I just wanted to share that one of my favorite things to have, because I'm on the go, I'm a new mom, is an IQ bar. And I am very picky about my bars, but IQ bar is entirely free from gluten, dairy, soy, GMOs, and artificial sweeteners, no crap in it. And they're incredible for your brain. Okay. So these are plant protein bars. They're packed with high quality ingredients. They'll keep you physically, mentally fit. Trust me, I have one just about every day. My favorite flavors, the banana nut. I love the chocolate sea salt, the peanut butter chip, the wild blueberry. They have a flavor for your desires. Obsessed. I also every single morning have their IQ Joe. So this is a jitter-free instant coffee. I don't know about you, but I used to drink coffee and it would make me so anxious, so jittery. But this has brain boosting magnesium in addition to the 200 milligrams of natural caffeine. Plus, it has lion's mane. So this is a productivity enhancing mushroom and you are going to love it. They have different flavors like original black, vanilla spice, cafe mocha, and toasted hazelnut. It's the best. So start each day right with IQ Bar's brain and body boosting bars. They have hydration mixes too, and mushroom coffees. Their ultimate sampler pack includes all three. So get 7 IQ Bar flavors, 4 IQ Mix flavors, and 4 IQ Joe flavors. And today our listeners get an exclusive offer of 20% off plus free shipping. So amazing. Do it now. Just text ALMOST to 64,000. That's ALMOST to 64000. One more time, you, our listeners, get an exclusive offer of 20% off plus free shipping when you text ALMOST to 64,000. So easy, just do it right now. I was out the other day and I was wearing my Skims Fits Everybody t-shirt. I have it in onyx, like the black color. And I got so many freaking compliments. It's a simple black t-shirt, but I was like, I know. It actually is my favorite t-shirt too. The Fits Everybody t-shirt from Skims just fits your body like a freaking glove without like constricting or squeezing in the wrong places. It just kind of like melts onto your body. It's amazing. It's so light. It's so comfortable. I wear it all the freaking time. If you are looking for like your favorite t-shirt, Skims has a bunch of different styles. In addition to the Fits Everybody t-shirt, I also love the boyfriend t-shirt. It is so buttery soft. It is like an easy fit, you know what I mean? The sleeves are perfect length. Sometimes I'll tuck it into jeans. Sometimes I'll like just wear it out with like bike shorts. So cute. I have it in the marble color, but they have a ton of different colors. I love Skims, y'all. I am a huge Skims fan, from underwear to t-shirts to loungewear to bras. They truly do it right. I've been wearing Skims, I would say, for like 3 years now. The best. Like best basics, best foundations. Just trust me on this one. So shop Skims t-shirt shop specifically at skims.com. And they're now available in sizes extra, extra small to 4X. So if you haven't yet, be sure to let them know we sent you. After you place your order, select podcast in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. That means the world. Head to skims.com. Yeah, there's a lot of stress that our bodies are under, environmental, physical, emotional, all the things.
But we also have control.
We have control.
Right? We do have control over a lot of things.
That's where I want to pivot to is like when someone comes to you with these types of symptoms, I guess, where are you starting? You know, where do you begin so that it can become something that is manageable to do over time rather than here's a million things, do them all, or you're shit out of luck.
Totally doomed. Yeah. You know, what I feel is most important for us to start with is period literacy, just understanding how your body works. For all these years now, it's over a decade, I've watched women, and I did the exact same thing, but I've watched women take their bodies to the doctor, like you take your car to the mechanic, hoping that someone's going to figure this thing out because you have no idea what the hell's going on in your body. And I've just watched how detrimental that is to a woman's overall mental and emotional and physical health. And sort of having this recognition that no one's going to save you. Only you can save yourself when it comes to these kinds of things. It's hard. And I think that it's part of our culture, right? To go to the doctor and the doctor's going to fix you. And when you're a kid, it makes sense because these are one-off things. Like you said, your son had a cough that lasted too long. So it makes sense to have an intervention. But then we continue down that path of continuing to go to the doctor, the medical doctor who has conventional Western training that obviously is not going to be the solution that we're looking for for these more long-term or deeper rooted issues. And so I just see that over and over again. And I still continue to see it to this day, right? Women are just like, well, I've been to my OB like 15 times and I'm not getting any answers. I'm like, okay, so this is now your opportunity. This is what you're being called to do, is to figure out what's going on with your body. So that's really where we start. So I start with education. I start with cycle tracking. I want you to understand your cycle, understand why your body is doing what it's doing. Because what I've said so many times is that your body is a barometer, or your period is a barometer for your overall health. Right. And if you're not paying attention, you're never going to be able to figure this out. You need a roadmap, and the roadmap, I think, is cycle tracking. And so we start with just basics. I'll start with the basic cycle tracking for those who are like, what do you want me to do, Nicole? Don't make me do this. And that's just tracking how long you're bleeding for. How long is your menstrual cycle overall? Do you have a heavy period? Is it a light period? What does it look like? Do you have mood symptoms? Do you have spotting before and after your period? Do you have pain? All of these kinds of things that I want everyone to start to understand. And then from there, we go on to more advanced cycle tracking, where I'll have them use probably a device. Most people want to use a device at this point, where you're taking your basal body temperature and you're tracking cervical fluid. And basal body temperature, for anyone who doesn't know, is basically your temperature first thing upon awakening, and it changes between your follicular phase and your luteal phase. So it goes up after progesterone rises. And that's an incredible indicator of whether you're ovulating, when you're ovulating, and ovulation is the driver of all of your sex hormone production. So I feel like if you can have just that knowledge alone, you're 10 steps ahead of the game.
The cervical fluid, how do you track that?
So it's very basic. It's not fancy like temperature, but you're checking your underwear. I always recommend wearing darker colored underwear and paying attention as you move towards the middle of your cycle. Typically that's what happens. And you know, it goes from this dry to wetter, creamier, and then stretchy, and then we'll change back to creamy again once that progesterone rises, because it basically shuts off the pipes, so to speak. So and I think that with that information, you could change your life. I mean, it changed my life completely in my 20s. I was using a wall calendar.
I know.
Right?
I know.
Yeah, there was no iPhone.
And it's really simple. You know, it's something that like you can incorporate into your everyday. Because I think some people feel like, oh, it's all that work. Like I have to take literally put the what do you call it? Thermometer next to your bed. First thing in the morning, like take it. Like that's it. It takes 2 seconds.
Totally.
So I guess describe And people are hip to cycle tracking in
Yes,
our community.
I
So I'm so
figured.
glad for that. But I want to like celebrate the period for a second and just,
Yes.
yeah, tell me why it is such an incredible cycle of our bodies and what, I guess, what it can tell us, you know, what
Yeah.
it can tell us about our health, etc. Anything else you want to bring in that just kind of reminds us how beautiful it is? Because I think from an early age, we're kind of told like, ew, cover it, hide it, whatever, it's annoying, all that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, how old were you when you stopped like hiding your tampon box at the store?
I know.
Right?
Yeah, it's one of those things like, I mean, I remember, yeah, like I wore pads for a long time, like a few
Right.
years because I was so scared about the I
Me too.
like couldn't put it in right.
Terrified,
And then I
I
was
know.
like, fuck this.
Yes.
So even just pads, it was like bulky and like
Huge box.
Yeah. Horrifying.
Yeah, totally. And so that I think is the message we really have to change, right? And I think that it starts with parents because
Yeah.
we're the ones with all the baggage around our periods from our childhood, whereas kids just have no qualms about it. I mean, all of my friends tell me about their period stories with their kids now, and you know, one of them will be changing a menstrual cup in front of her daughter. And she's like, oh, what's that kind of thing? And she explains it. And she's like, okay, cool. And walks out the bathroom. And another one said that her mom, she was like, Mom, you have a volcano in the toilet. Like just hilarious stuff, right? And they think it's all funny and cute. And they have no issues. And they're all like 7, 8, 9 years old now. And nobody's weirded out by any of it. So I feel like we have
early
hope.
exposure and like communication
And like taking your stuff out of the equation is really the biggest thing.
Completely.
And yeah, so I feel positive about that. I feel like we're moving in the right direction. But what I think is most important when we're thinking about our period is that your period's not just your period. It's not this thing that just shows up randomly to torture you. It's this thing that actually is so intrinsic to your health, mental health, physical health, and well-being throughout the menstrual life cycle. And so I think the sooner we can get on board with the idea that our period is a barometer of our overall health, that it is a reflection of what's going on with us, the better our lives are going to be in such a drastic way. Yeah. And so the biggest part I think of a period is that it's not a big deal. It's actually ovulation that's the really big deal. So I call it the star of the show because it really is what we need to be aiming for. And so if you're ovulating, that means that you are producing adequate levels, in many cases, not always, of estrogen, your key female sex hormone, and progesterone, which I call the keep calm and carry on hormone because that's the good hormone the second half of the cycle. And ovulation is so crucial because if you're not making that estrogen and your progesterone, or estradiol, which is the foundational estrogen when you're still cycling, you're going to run into a lot of problems because we have estrogen receptors on pretty much every organ and gland in our body, as well as progesterone receptors. And so when you are in a low estrogen state, for instance, like if you just come off the pill, you feel universally crappy because you need it for everything. You need it for your brain function, your cognitive function. You need it for heart health, cardiovascular, blood vessels. You need it for digestive function. Estrogen, actually, women might notice like in the first half of your cycle when estrogen's rising, you tend to have better bowel movements than in the second half. Progesterone slows things down. So you might have constipation and things like that.
Okay.
So you need it for that. You need it for pretty much everything like mood, sex drive, across the board, skin, hair, nails. We feel amazing and look amazing at ovulation because it's sort of nature's way of making us super enticing for reproduction. So there's a reason for everything. And progesterone is similar. We need it for breast health, heart health as well. Again, brain function, mood stabilization.
Wow.
That's the key hormone for mood stabilization in the second half of the cycle. And if we don't have enough of it, it's why we struggle so much in that luteal phase.
Okay.
And so it's why our moods really tank in many cases. So we need those two hormones. We need testosterone. That also gets a huge bump because of ovulation. And in fact, all of your testosterone, or not all of it, but a lot of your testosterone is converted to estrogen. That's how our body makes estrogen for the most part.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we need testosterone. And that happens because of ovulation too. So when we don't ovulate, like when we're on the pill, all of those hormones are mostly flatlined. There's like little bumps here and there.
Isn't that crazy? We just don't ovulate when we're on the pill.
No, we don't.
I had no idea.
Yeah, nobody knows. I just had someone say the other day, she was like, I ovulate, I'm on the pill. I was like, no, honey, you don't. And if you do, you should be worried because you could get pregnant unintentionally.
Wow.
Yeah. So a lot of women don't even realize that they're not ovulating when they're on the pill. And I'm like, but that is the basic mechanism of action for the pill. So you should at least know that your doctor should at least have communicated that basic understanding of how this thing works to you.
Completely.
Yeah. So a period is just amazing. When I think about what your period can tell you, oh my goodness, it's endless. And, I think about like a heavy period, for instance. That is usually just met with, okay, well, I'm just going to put you on the pill. But you could have a bleeding disorder like von Willebrand disease. That is the most prevalent bleeding disorder in women. And it is a big contributor to heavy periods, particularly if they start from a very young age, like from the get-go, if you've had a heavy period. And if you get nosebleeds and things like that, typically you might be diagnosed with a bleeding disorder. But there's so many more. So fibroids, endometriosis, adenomyosis. So adenomyosis is very similar to endo, except that tissue grows into the uterine muscular wall.
Okay.
And so basically it ends up causing very heavy bleeding. So it looks like a sponge almost. And so you just bleed profusely.
Wow.
And it happens in 20% of women with endo. So it's, they're two that go together and it does not make periods fun. As well as thyroid problems. We don't even realize our thyroid is so connected to our menstrual cycle.
How so?
Because basically you need adequate T3, which is the active form of thyroid hormone, to make progesterone, to make adequate progesterone, because your ovaries need T3 to function optimally. And so when you don't have enough T3, because your thyroid is underperforming for various reasons, you don't make enough progesterone, and then you need progesterone to make T3. So it's this whole loop that you might run into, and you don't even realize it. So many of us have underactive thyroids.
And is medication the only way to treat an underactive thyroid?
No, not in all cases. It depends on the cause of the thyroid problem. Like if it's an autoimmune thyroiditis type of situation, like Hashimoto's, you might need medication. Some people, if the damage has gone too long or is too bad, then yeah, you will. But in some cases you don't. You can do a reversal, but it takes a significant amount of work. And I feel like working with a trained practitioner really helps with that. But yeah, like you could have thyroid problems and you don't even realize. So all of these underlying problems could be happening, causing that heavy period. And yet we're just treating the symptom, the heavy period, with the pill or with an IUD. The IUD, like a Mirena or a hormonal IUD is often used for heavy periods. So we'll just treat it that way and then let whatever the condition is go on. And then we run into so many problems. And then by the time we're 30 or 35, we're in like full blown whatever the condition is. And then we're struggling with fertility or some other problem, or we need to have a hysterectomy because the bleeding is so out of control. So that's just a heavy period. I could go on.
Yeah.
you know?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's really unfortunate.
Yeah. The education piece. That's why I'm so glad you're doing what you're doing.
Thank you. I'm trying.
Yeah. And I think, I just think people are living with a lot of pain, living with a lot of discomfort and not knowing that they could feel better. So in terms of improving PMS, PMDD, endo, PCOS, and I know it's probably slightly different for each one, but I guess generally, what are you recommending nutritionally, lifestyle-wise, all those things?
All the things.
Supplements.
I know, right? Everything.
Yeah, I know.
I know.
Well, yeah, I think that's also like a really good point. Just to pause, it's like there's no like the birth control pill isn't the one thing fixes all, and it's rarely the case with anything.
Yeah.
People will ask me because I used to have really bad acne, and they're like, "So what's the thing that like fixed your skin?" Yeah. And I'm like, "Do you have a few hours?" Because like there's so many things that I've done, continue to do, experiment with, like it just is everything.
It's like everything, right? I know. You just kind of throw things at the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah.
For sure. I did the same thing too. It took me years to figure it out. And I was in my 20s. So I feel like then I didn't really care that much.
Right.
It's like, yeah, this sucks, but I'll live with it.
Yeah.
Type of thing. But then you get into your 30s and then your 40s and you're like, hell no, I can't do this anymore. There's no way. And I think that that's where a lot of women are now. Thankfully, we've really woken up to the fact that this is not working.
Yeah.
This whole approach is definitely
Agreed.
in need of an overhaul. And it's so interesting. There was a Washington Post article recently about
Oh yeah,
that.
up in arms. Everyone's up in
The
arms.
drama.
Thank God.
Yes, I know, right? Where they talked about misinformation online and how women were ditching the pill or their birth control options because of the misinformation that was so rampant online. And I was like, no, that's actually not correct.
Yeah.
But okay.
The comment section was everything.
Beyond
There
amazing.
wasn't one comment that was like, yeah, misinformation. They're like, what the fuck?
Literally, women were so fucking pissed. And as they should be.
Yeah.
Because we've just been forgotten. It's crazy. And so that, I think, is amazing because we now have this shift where women have, like I said, woken up to the fact that this is definitely not working.
Sure.
And I think that when you're thinking about what to do or where to start, as I said, like you want to get educated, you want to understand what's going on with your cycle. And then you want to really advocate for yourself because that is the piece that I think we don't really talk about a lot or enough. And it's that you go to the doctor and it's already a little bit of an intimidating experience. So if you don't really know what's going on with your body, you just sort of nod and say, okay, and then you just go on with your life and you don't get the testing that you really wanted to get. Or even if you did ask and you're told no, you kind of just take that at face value and you just leave without getting the answers that you need. And so I think that really cultivating courage to advocate for yourself and demand that you get better treatment is so important. So one of the things that I always tell my clients is to, if you're going to the doctor, here are the questions that you want to be asking. And also, if they tell you they can't do something or they won't do something, tell them to make a note in your chart that they refused to do that thing, whether it's the transvaginal ultrasound or it's the blood work that you really feel you need to get because you're hemorrhaging every month or you don't have a period or whatever it is. And they'll usually do an about face and they'll say, okay, we'll do the thing that you want us to do. So I always say that, like, it's really about when you educate yourself, that allows you to cultivate courage. It allows you to have, or to be able to just advocate for yourself and say, no, I won't stand for that anymore. And, or find another doctor type of thing, get a second opinion, a third opinion.
Yep.
So that's like one of the big things that I feel like I coach women around a lot as well. Like, how do you get what you need to get out of this broken ass system?
Such a big one.
Yeah, it's a huge one.
Yeah, like even just navigating when I was pregnant and going to the doctor and and I had my preferences, my birth plan. Thankfully, my doctor was like, I felt like he was very open to my preferences.
Yeah.
But definitely more like Western medical leaning for sure.
Yeah.
But was open. But I just even noticed within myself, like I had all these preferences. I was like, yeah, fuck yeah, I'm going to ask all these questions.
Yes.
And when it came to the moment, it was hard.
It's so hard.
It was hard for me to advocate for myself, to like stand in what I knew and what I wanted. Because like their reaction or how they like how I sensed that they would respond or react, I was like, I don't want to deal with this, whatever. So I just want to emphasize that like it's so important that you advocate for yourself, that you ask those questions. You'll never regret asking those questions. Like they should be expecting these questions. And if they're not, like then maybe you can reevaluate that provider or whatever.
Yeah.
But at least you know that you asked those questions.
Yes, I could not agree with you more. I actually had an experience a couple of years ago where obviously I told you I moved. So I was like, okay, let me find another gynecologist.
Yeah.
And I found a practice that had midwives. So I thought, okay, midwives, they're a little bit more open. We'll try that. And it was the most demoralizing experience.
No way.
And I was like, I actually wrote a book. I will never say that to people ever because I find it so obnoxious, but I literally told
I
this
would
woman,
drop it. I would just be like, by the way, I would drop the book on their desk.
Well, I actually happened to have a box of books in the car. I ran out and got it for her because I was so upset by the situation. she was just so dismissive and I mean, not interested at all in anything I had to say, but she was like, you have to go get a mammogram immediately. You're over 40. You haven't gotten a mammogram. That was her biggest concern. She was so upset about that and could care less about the rest of the problems that were actually happening to me in the moment. I was so mad.
Wow.
So that was what prompted me. And it was crazy because like you said, right? We know some things.
Yes.
So if you don't know anything and you go in there,
I know.
of course you're just going to be jerked around.
Completely.
So I feel like that's one of the things. I mean, there's multiple others, obviously, which we can get into for sure, like where we go, what we do.
Mm-hmm. I guess the nutrition piece people are always super, super interested in, as well as like the exercise movement. I guess what are you recommending for people if they need to balance their hormones? Is that the right thing to say?
Yeah, totally. I know it's always funny when I hear the term, oh, hormone balances don't exist. I'm like, well, they kind of do.
Yeah.
I mean, they really do. If your hormones are not where they're supposed to be on the reference ranges for your test results, then yeah, they're not balanced.
Yep.
For lack of a better term. But basically, I feel like it really just depends on what's going on with you.
Sure.
But generally speaking, I sort of take the approach of the hormonal hierarchy that I talked about this in the book, basically talked about the fact that cortisol and insulin are our quote unquote queen bee hormones, and they are the ones that are kind of running the show. And so if we're trying to fix estrogen and progesterone, but we don't even know why they're imbalanced in the first place, we can't really, we're going to not get very far. Like we're really going to have a very limited set of results with that. So essentially, I tell women, okay, cortisol, insulin, those two hormones are your stress hormone, your blood sugar balancing hormone. And as we talked about with the stress piece, if your life is chaotic, then that's really where you have to start. So I think with my clients, it just depends on what's going on with them personally. But oftentimes I'll just start with food because that seems to be across the board the easiest thing to do.
Right.
And that, of course, gives you the nutrients to then start to have the bandwidth to figure out the stress piece in your life. So I think that that's a good place to start. And it really is as straightforward as a blood sugar balancing type of diet. And it doesn't sound as appealing, I think, to a lot of women because they're just like, what about my estrogen and my progesterone and my testosterone? What do I do with that? But as I talk about in the book, and I've talked about before so many times, this hormonal hierarchy is that it's a trickle-down effect. And so you really have to figure out what's going on up top, and they're going to all impact your down below hormones, those subordinate hormones. And so we start with food. And so I always say like, okay, how are you going to make your plate type of thing? Yep. And so we start with like the protein, the complex carbs, the fiber, the veggies, some kind of healthy fat. And just go from there. And then we start with like that for breakfast, even if that's the only place you can start, if that's the only thing you can do. Can we do caffeine after you've eaten food? Can you exercise maybe after you've eaten something small? Yeah. Because what we don't realize is that our cortisol awakening response, when our cortisol rises first thing in the morning, when we see light, when we open our eyes, that cortisol doesn't really go down until you've had a bite of something. And so it just continues to rise and rise. And so we're going to be in a constant state of dysregulation throughout the day with not only cortisol, but blood sugar and insulin too.
I think a lot of women, just to say, I think, because I did this, are fasting.
Yes.
In the morning or having coffee first thing, which I did as well. I would have my bulletproof coffee, but still it's coffee, you know? And so, I mean, it's changed my life to have an actual breakfast in the morning.
Me too.
And I feel so much better. I'll still have my coffee, but it's after and I don't have as much and whatever. But I think we see these trends like fasting or something like that. And we don't realize, we've talked about this on the show, but like, fasting research was done on men. Like there's no real research on like women fasting, at least that I know of. And it's not for every body.
That's it too.
Yeah.
Yeah. This idea that everything is for everyone. I had this woman say to me a couple of months ago that she'd started a keto diet. Well, she didn't say the keto diet first. She said, I have lost my period. And I said, well, how long has it been? And she said, about 3 months. And I said, well, what's changed in the last 3 months? And she says, I started a keto diet. like, well, that might be it.
Wow.
You are
What are you
likely-
lacking in the ketogenic diet?
Well, you're not having enough carbohydrates, and you probably need those carbs for ovulation, because ovulation is such an intense process. I mean, it is such an energy intensive endeavor on the part of your body.
Yes.
When you think about the fact that you are building up to the point when you reach ovulation where this egg, which is so cool because it leaves your ovary and goes into your fallopian tube.
So cool.
And then within 24 hours, you have a fully vascularized mini endocrine gland on your ovary that is pumping out progesterone. I'm like, would you guys have any idea what that takes to create all of that? And that little egg also, when it's at right before ovulation, it's the most mitochondria dense cell in your entire body.
Wow.
It's so cool. I know.
Cool.
Isn't that amazing? I know.
That's amazing.
Our ovaries are like little mitochondria powerhouses, obviously, right? Because that's where little humans come from.
That's wild.
It's so wild. And so when you think about that and you don't have carbohydrates in your diet anymore, yeah, you're going to potentially run into major problems.
Okay.
Especially if you lose a lot of weight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right. If you lose a lot of weight too, if you were to do like a keto diet or some low carb diet, that's another big thing that happens.
Yeah.
I see a lot of women lose their periods that way as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know. It's so hard though, because you're hearing so many messages. I've done the same thing as you. I've done the fasting thing and yeah, all of it. Like, and I wait till lunch to have food and I was like, yeah, I feel good. But then, I tested my hormones and cortisol was not looking so good. So,
and I think women get confused too. I'm glad we're talking about this. It's like when I was fasting, when I was in LA, I was like I was going off of like the feeling of like, okay, I feel skinny.
Yeah.
Feel light.
So great.
My brain is clear. Like I was kind of going off those things.
Yeah.
Rather than being like, wait, do I experience like a crazy crash in the afternoon? Or like I wasn't really noticing the other aspects of my decisions that were really like impacting my health and my hormones and all of that. So yeah, I totally get it because it's nice to feel skinny. I mean,
great.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but
no,
like
it's so
I
great.
wasn't really feeling good.
Right.
To be honest.
I think you do feel good initially, right? Like you
Initially,
said, that cortisol is great in the short term.
Right.
And that's the thing I keep telling women too, is that it's great in the short term. That is what our whole stress response was designed around, short-term experiences.
Short-term.
Yeah.
Not this.
But this long-term thing,
always.
it becomes catabolic. And so it destroys your muscle and it really messes your brain up and does all kinds of bad things to us.
Yeah.
So we really have to be cognizant of what we're experiencing and not just go on, well, someone told me to do the keto diet or my boyfriend did or my trainer did or whatever, because I think that that's what we tend to do as well. Like if someone in a position of authority says, well, hey, this really works, you should try it.
Yeah.
A lot of us will try it.
Yeah.
It makes sense. I think we've all been there.
Of course.
Yeah. So
cue the Ozempic conversation.
Oh man, girl.
I'll skip that one.
Podcast episode all on its own.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, not really.
Okay. All right.
Yes,
cool.
yes and no.
We'll talk offline.
Yes.
Talk to me about this collective, the Fix Your Period collective. So I really think this is very important. Just especially during this time, I think this type of conversation around our health can feel incredibly isolating, lonely.
Yeah.
We can feel overwhelmed by the information. Does it apply to me? Does it not? What should I do? What's the first step? So talk to me about this space that you've created.
Yes. Oh man, this has been in the works for multiple years now.
I'm sure.
Yeah. I feel like I needed some sort of investor to come in with like
I'm
300,000
Yeah.
to pay for this thing.
Yeah.
It has been such a labor of love, but I agree with what you're saying. I think back to writing my book in 2018, 2019, and I was like, this is the magnum opus. I've got this. Like, this is going to change the world. And then, of course, the pandemic happened when it came out. So I was like, oh, great. Okay. But it just wasn't enough. It's just women needed more. Yeah. And so we came up with this idea to create an in-depth period quiz that would basically populate on a dashboard, your quiz results so that you could see what was going on with you. And somehow we've managed to pull this off. And it's so incredible. It really is a first of its kind type of thing. Yeah. And it is so accessible. And that's what I really, really wanted.
Wow.
And so basically you'll take this quiz and you'll get these results and you can see very clearly if you have a heavy period or a too light period, or if you are, you have really bad pain and why do you have that? And so I explain all of that to them too. And you get a period score and you're on a little like bell curve as well compared to everyone else who's taken it. So you'll really start to see very clearly. I feel like it's sort of my book brought to life a little bit.
Yeah.
And again, it's information that we all need to start with, like the basic understanding of your body and how it works and how your menstrual cycle works. And like I said, the information on how to advocate for yourself with your doctor.
Oh,
and,
I love that.
Yeah. And like the nutrition piece and pretty much everything that I've talked about inside of the book and for years on Instagram and everywhere else. It's all collated in one spot with recipes and a community. And yeah, I know. And like resources. So all my podcast episodes, like all my blog posts. Yeah, everything is in there.
Awesome.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I'm so excited about it.
And where can people find this?
On fixyourperiod.com.
Great.
Kept it easy for everybody.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, the book is Fix Your Period, 6 Weeks to Banish Bloating, Conquer Cramps, Manage Moodiness, and Ignite Lasting Hormone Balance. I could talk to you forever. I feel like we need a part 2.
I'd love that.
But yeah, this has been incredible. I really appreciate you and appreciate this conversation. And sometimes I think like, oh, I'll get sick of this like hormone conversation. I never do. It's always a topic of conversation for me, for the community. And I'm just so happy that like people have the resources now to actually take control of their health in this way. Cause I think we need to do it. Clearly Western medical is a little behind, a lot behind.
Yeah. Thank you.
We'll get there.
I know, right? We're working on it.
Yeah.
I think that there really is a huge shift. It's so exciting to see. And I am really thrilled about how women are just speaking up and just not taking it anymore. And we're finally at the point where women, I think, are now just like getting help. And we were talking about endometriosis so much more and PCOS and all of these other conditions that, as you said, right, we didn't really know anything about those 10 years ago. No one really spoke about it.
So true.
So we're really at the point now where, each of these conditions has months of the year.
Yeah.
So we're definitely at that time, I think, where, your period is, and perimenopause and menopause are all having a moment. And I'm excited about what's to come.
Me too. Yeah. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Lindsey.
Amazing. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next one. Bye. Thank you, Nicole, for coming on the show. You can go to NicoleMJardim.com or you can go to FixYourPeriod.com. The book is Fix Your Period.
Love you guys so much. We'll see you on the next one. Thanks for tuning in to Almost 30 Podcast.
See ya.
Bye.